Good
Hi,
evening.
Gunjan.
Hi.
Good
Hi,
evening.
Vineet. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. How are you? I hope my video is clear. Sometimes I have problem with live sessions.
No, no, it's clear to me. So I'm assuming that all our the audience also can see you clearly. Thank you
Oops.
so much for being here. So people who are watching us, I just want to introduce Dr. Vineet Agarwal, who has who's done amazing work in bringing our legends to life in his books, like Legend of Parshuram. What I like about Vineet's books is that he humanizes the legends. So where we've always been told कि परशुराम जी तो बहुत एक amazing थे. So what I love about Vineet your work is that you humanize them, कि उनके experiences, उनका खौफ, उनका anxiety levels बिल्कुल वैसे ही हैं जैसे हम लोगों के होते हैं. So that is
Right.
what I absolutely love about that, because it's more relatable, I would say, because with the same social construct जहाँ वो anxiety से distrust से या किसी भी social problem से जूझ रहे हैं,
Right.
अपने emotion से जूझ रहे हैं, it is only the reaction that they have. It is about the doing the right thing which makes them different and makes them almost divine.
Very true.
So that is what I love about Vineet's book. So welcome to our show, and thank you for taking the time out for doing this. This podcast is by House of Ram, so we will be talking about Shri Ram. And I just want to hear, Vineet, your opinion on, because you do scientific study of the scriptures, etc. So, आपके लिए राम का, what does Ram mean to you?
Oh, well, I think it's a very difficult question to answer, but let me start by first thanking you for inviting me here for this session today. It's an absolute pleasure to be here. And I think there's so much good work that you are doing. I feel privileged to be able to help in any way, even if it is through discussions. And जैसे आपने कहा गुंजन जी, there is so much that goes on in the lives of gods as well. When they descend to earth, when they come down as avatars, they are limited by the society, the rules set by the society that they are living in. Very few actually, like probably Shri Krishna was one who broke all the rules. But other avatars, when they come down, whether it is Parshuramji, whether it is Shri Ram, they more or less behave within the parameters set by the society that they are living in. Because the whole purpose is to set the ideals for humanity. So if they're always acting, larger than life, or they're always breaking rules like Shri Krishna did, I don't think anyone else could follow, what Krishna did. But whatever Ram did, or whatever Parshuram did, or whatever teachings they had or they shared, through their lives, I think those are definitely things that we can apply in our own lives. So for me, I think Sri Ram has a lot of significance in the sense that he gave us the absolute ideals for humanity, whether it is being the ideal son, ideal brother, ideal friend, ideal enemy, ideal husband. A lot of people would disagree with that, but he was the ideal husband, and probably we'll cover those things, in the discussion further. But he was the ideal stepson. He was the ideal stepbrother. So many superlatives that you can assign to him just because of the way he behaved, and all within the limitations of his human birth. In fact, everything that he did was within those confines set by the physical body, or there's very few instances when he actually showed anger, and he almost metamorphosed into Narayan, but then he didn't. So he again controlled himself and again got back to the human level that he was supposed to maintain. I think there's a lot of significance, and I hope throughout this discussion today, we'll bring out some facets of Sri Ram's life that people might not have thought of, or they might not be aware of, because very few people actually read the Valmiki Ramayana. So most of our knowledge is based on the probably the regional versions that we have read, or the TV serials that we have seen, which borrow heavily from various adaptations. So most of us, we don't even know what exactly Valmiki Ramayana says about Ram or Ravan or Sita, or how those characters were. So I hope through this discussion we'll discuss some many interesting aspects, and we'll bring them forward for the audience.
आई एम सो लुकिंग फॉरवर्ड टू दैट. तो इसको ना दो में ब्रेक करते हैं विनीत. एक कहते
Sure.
हैं कि वेर यू थिंक दैट राम वॉज डिवाइन, कि वो विष्णु के अवतार है. तो उसमें आई वॉन्ट टू टॉक अबाउट कि अगर वो विष्णु के अवतार भी हैं, तो भी उनकी लाइफ से आपको ये समझ में आता है दैट कर्म से वो भी नहीं बचे. सो द एंटायर रामायण में जो उनके साथ हुआ है, दैट इज एक्चुअली द कल्मिनेशन ऑफ 3 कर्सेस. सो हाँ, सो यू विल बी द बेस्ट पर्सन कि अगर हम ये मान के चले कि वो डिवाइन है और वो विष्णु के अवतार हैं, तो उनके कौन से वो कर्सेस थे जिसको वो फुलफिल करने उनको ये जन्म लेना पड़ा.
Ji, so thank you for that question, Gunjan ji. I think a lot of people don't know the background. We know कि हाँ Ramji was born for a specific purpose to kill Ravan, but उसके पीछे की जो story है, बहुत सारी चीजें हुई और बहुत सारी चीजें, lot of things had to come together for this avatar to take birth, for Sita to take birth. In fact, पूरी रामायण is a result of multiple curses. You know. So it's not just Lord Vishnu who was cursed. So one of the major curses was by Bhrigu Rishi, where there was this incident. I'm not sure whether your audience is more comfortable with Hindi or English. I can speak in either.
So we can do a mix. That's okay.
Okay, perfect. So the first, the most important curse was by Bhrigu, because Bhrigu is one of the Manasputras of Brahma. A lot of people ask me that, how could a rishi give a curse to Lord Vishnu? Or how could a rishi give curse to Shiva? Or, anyone else for that matter? But these rishis are not humans, they are these, especially these Manasputras, they were thought-born or mind-born sons of Brahmaji. So they were the first creations in this, when the creation started, they were the first ones to come out of Brahma's mind. And thereafter, there were the Sanat Kumars, then the Manasputras, and, of course, Rudra, according to the Vaishnava Purans, also came out of Brahma's forehead. But these are very powerful beings. These are not human sadhus or rishis that we are talking about. Secondly, very interestingly, I want to highlight this relationship that a lot of people might not know, that Bhrigu's daughter is Lakshmi, who is married to Vishnu.
Right.
So Bhrigu is actually Lord Vishnu's father-in-law. Okay. So if you realize,
Lakshmi ji to samudra manthan se nikli thi na?
So that was a rebirth. That was a rebirth, because Durvasa Rishi ne ek baar curse kiya tha Indra ji ko that he will lose all the riches, and that is why Lakshmi also left from Swarg. Right. And then they had to regain everything through the Samudra Manthan. So a lot of people know Lakshmi's origin from the ocean. But initially, to begin with, she was the daughter of Bhrigu. And Lakshmi is married to Vishnu. So Bhrigu is, in a way, Lord Vishnu's, जो उनका उन्होंने रूप लिया है, जिस रूप में उन्होंने लक्ष्मी जी से शादी की है, उस रूप में Bhrigu is his father-in-law. So Bhrigu was well within his rights to curse Vishnu, first of all. He was unhappy with his damad and he cursed him. So
ये पहले से चला आ रहा है that a ससुर जी will never be happy with a damad. Even Daksh was not happy with Shiv. So
completely.
हमारे culture में ही है.
I think वो human nature में है. So
human nature में है.
It's in human nature. So एक वो curse था जो सबसे पहला था. उसमें भी it was not an illogical curse. It was not based on Bhrigu Rishi's whims and fancies. There was a reason. There was a battle between Devas and Asuras, जिसमें Devas were almost winning, but the Asuras went and they hid in the ashram of Bhrigu Rishi. Bhrigu Rishi was not there at his ashram at that time, so his wife gave protection to the Asuras. Now, of course, Devas did not want that to happen because, his Bhrigu Rishi's wife, Khyati, was a very powerful woman. Very, she had a lot of yogic and mystic powers. But Devtas wanted to finish their enemies once and for all. But, Bhrigu Rishi's wife, she stepped in. She was about to actually, I think, she paralyzed Indra, that much I remember. And she was about to burn him to cinders when Vishnu intervenes. And he cuts off her head with his Sudarshan Chakra. So that, of course, he did to save the Devas, from annihilation. Because it wasn't their fault. They were fighting with their enemies, they were following their enemies, and they were deciding to, finish the battle of supremacy once and for all. But Khyati intervened, and that is why Vishnuji again intervened. So the whole situation turned, it was good for Devas that they could annihilate their enemies, but Bhrigu was unhappy. And he was unhappy with the Devas and he was unhappy with Lord Vishnu. And he cursed Lord Vishnu that just the way you have, separated me from my spouse, you will also be separated from your spouse. Now, the irony here is that Bhrigu revived his wife using his yogic powers.
Because he has that mantra. Because देवों ने जब वो अमृत पी लिया था तो फिर असुरों को भी Bhrigu has the wherewithal to bring dead asuras back to life.
So Bhrigu actually revived his wife, but in the meantime he had already cursed Lord Vishnu. So, and nobody can curse the Lord unless and until he wants to take it on himself. So it's very beautiful the way, the gods, the Trinity, they take these curses and they utilize them to, keep respect for the original Rishi. They do not deny the curse, they accept it and they utilize it for some Leela later. Right. So this entire curse actually played out when Shri Ram and Sita were separated in their human forms. Right. So it's a very beautiful story, but it's in the background, so a lot of people don't know it. There are other curses also, but
it's उसका है कि वो नारद जी fell in love with someone, right. And then he said कि मुझे एकदम ना विष्णु जी का रूप चाहिए, so he goes to Narayan and says कि मुझे सुंदर बना दो, and right. Vishnu ji in his sense of humor turns him into a kind of a monkey-faced person where everyone starts laughing at him. So right. नारद जी का भी कर्ज था कि तुम्हें भी कभी ना हमारे जैसों की जरूरत पड़ेगी and monkeys will help you. So you made me a laughing stock, but someday you will know how important we are.
Definitely.
And we are the ones who are going to help you. So एक वो कर्ज था. So what I was saying was that जो अगर हम उनको divine भी माने,
right.
तो उनको भी अपने कर्मों का फल चुकाना पड़ा. अब वो कैसे भी चुकाएं, आके चुकाएं. राम की जो इमोशन है at separation of his wife, at the death of his father, or being ill treated by a stepmother, I am sure वो बिल्कुल वैसे ही हैं जैसे हमारी फीलिंग्स होंगी. I am sure it's only the reaction. तो ये तो उनका divine part हो गया. But now let's just take that Ram was actually a human being. मेरा ये मानना है विनीत that because his choices, क्योंकि उनकी लाइफ में तो मतलब शुरू से लेके अंत तक ना ड्रामा ही चला. मतलब there was violence everywhere. It started with Tadka, then went to Manthara, then went to Shrupnakha, then went to Ravan, then went to separation through a Dhobi. So मतलब it's been technically either physically violent, emotionally violent, mentally violent. For a prince to go live in the jungle, I'm sure was a mentally violent experience, right? तो मतलब उनकी लाइफ में बिल्कुल ही वायलेंस चला. Yet he remains a मर्यादा पुरुषोत्तम. उनकी स्टोरीज में है he remains calm, though his anger is legendary, etc. तो मुझे now let's look at Ram from a very human perspective कि वो human being थे. उनके रिएक्शंस पे बात करते हैं कि उनके रिएक्शंस इतने मर्यादा के उसमें इतने परफेक्ट और आइडियल. Why is he considered the ideal human being? So इसमें ना मेरा पहला आता है that जैसे हम लोग बोलते हैं कि जो भी बच्चा अपने माँ बाप की बात मानता है वो बहुत ही अच्छा बच्चा है, राइट. बट अगर मैं राम को देखती हूँ तो मुझे लगता है कि राम के पिताजी बोल बोल के परेशान हो गए कि मुझे मार दे बेटा और राजा बन जा. प्रजा ने बोला कि हम चाहते हैं आप बन जाए राजा. I remember hearing you at one of the podcasts where you're talking about Jabali, after Dashrath dies, Jabali is trying to convince him कि किसने देखा, कौन सा promise, आ जाओ राजा बन जाओ and all that. So you know, मतलब अगर मैं रामायण देखूं ना विनीत, तो मेरे को ऐसा लगता है कि राम ने अपने पिताजी की बात नहीं मानी थी इस चीज पे. राइट. मतलब किस किस बच्चे ने अपने पिताजी की बात मानी थी? बच्चे ने मानी थी मेघनाथ ने रावण की. You know what I mean? मेघनाथ, रावण ने कहा कि नहीं हम करेंगे चढ़ाई, तो मेघनाथ ने कहा जी पिताजी, एंड यू नो दैट वेज. तो मतलब वैसे तो ये एक स्टैंडर्ड रूल है कि अगर आप अपने माँ बाप की बात मानते हैं तो आप एक बहुत ही अच्छे बच्चे हैं. लेकिन राम की स्टोरी, व्हाट डू यू थिंक अबाउट दिस, दैट व्हाट इज द राम स्टोरी ट्राइंग टू टेल यू? That you know, you just have to do the right thing maybe, and even if it's coming from your parents who may be coming from invested interests or whatever, you still have to have a moral conscience about what you're doing. What do you think about that?
Definitely, Gunjaji. I think you said a very, pertinent point about your moral conscience. What do you feel is right? In that situation, it does not matter कि उनके पिता ने उनको क्या कहा कि you rebel against me और तुम विद्रोह कर दो, तुम राजा बन जाओ, मुझे हटा दो. Lakshman was all for it. But Ram was like, no, you are a king first, and the king has given the promise to the queen. Right? So I being the successor, I being the heir to the throne, what kind of ideals would I be setting if I break the promise that the king has made? मेरे पिता ने चाहे मुझे बोला कि तुम विद्रोह कर दो, बट मैं किंग के अगेंस्ट विद्रोह नहीं कर सकता, क्योंकि that is not the right thing to do. And what does it say about me? I'm ambitious, right? But I'm not. I care more about following dharma. I'm not greedy about sitting on the throne. I'm very happy. I trust my brothers. And Ram ne बार बार यही बोला कि Bharat, when even when Lakshman was arguing that this is all because of Bharat and all that, and Ram says कि Bharat will be a able king. I have full faith on him. So मुझे कोई डाउट ही नहीं है, संदेह ही नहीं है उस पे. So बट मेरी इच्छा ये नहीं है कि मैं राजा बनूं. मेरी इच्छा ये है कि मैं जो सही है वो करूंगा. सो अगर मेरे पिता ने मुझे कहा विद्रोह करने के लिए, पर वो राजनीति के अगेंस्ट है, राजा के अगेंस्ट विद्रोह मुझे नहीं करना है फॉर पर्सनल ग्रीड. और actually if you see the promise that Dashrath had given to Kaikeyi was not as per the dharma of a raja, of a king.
Correct.
Right? So Dashrath had already broken that faith or that dharma or the ethic
so
of
that is, तो उन्होंने अपने धर्म को सेकेंडरी रखा और अपने प्यार और इमोशन को फर्स्ट रखा कि भाई मैं इमोशन में बह गया और मैंने दे दिया ये वचन कैकेयी को. Whereas as a राजा his धर्म should have been कि मेरी प्रजा को सबसे एबल राजा मिलेगा, वो कोई भी हो सकता है. Exactly. So I can't promise कि मैं राजगद्दी किसको दूंगा, because there was no guarantee कि कैकेयी के बेटे भरत की जगह कोई मतलब really unfortunately कुछ और भी हो सकता था. ये तो किस्मत थी कि भरत भी अच्छे थे. बिल्कुल. And Ram probably, I think it's beautiful the way his life shaped up. He was learning from his experiences. He was a young prince. और उन्होंने जो भी एक्सपीरियंसेस उसके पहले लिए, जंगल में जब वो गए, जब उन्होंने विश्वामित्र जी की हेल्प की, जो कुछ उन्होंने वहां सीखा, उन्होंने वहां देखा, what he saw, when he met Ahalya, when he heard the story of Ahalya, when he went to Mithila, if you realize, Mithila was in big trouble. मिथिला में जो स्वयंवर की हम बात सुनते हैं, वो स्वयंवर तो एक्चुअली 1 साल पहले हो चुका था और स्वयंवर में सब राजा हार चुके थे. तो 1 साल से मिथिला के ऊपर घेराव डाल के राजा जमे हुए थे जो मिथिला के ऊपर अटैक कर रहे थे. और राजा जनक के जो छोटे भाई थे कुशध्वज, ही वॉज फाइटिंग अ बैटल विद मल्टीपल किंग्स मिथिला की सुरक्षा के लिए. और आप सीता के बारे में सोचिए कि सीता जो without any fault of hers, she's stuck in that situation कि अगर उन्हें स्वयंवर में कोई राजा पसंद भी आया तो भी वो उसे चुन नहीं सकती because of this condition, and no one is able to pick the bow of Shiva. So Ram, when he reaches there and he sees that, imagine उनके एक young teenager who's not even 16. That's what the Ramayana says, that he wasn't even 16 when he was taken to the forest. एक young बच्चा जिसने अपने ऐशो आराम की दुनिया से, महल से बाहर कभी कदम नहीं रखा है, he is going into the forest, he is seeing the situation of common people,
He's seeing
Right.
the situation which, various marital situations that he couldn't have imagined. उन्होंने
Yes.
अपने घर में जरूर देखा था कि उनके पिता की 3 पत्नियां हैं, उनके भी आपस में मनमुटाव होते होंगे, आपस में
That's so
टैंट्रम्स थ्रो
true.
होते होंगे। और फिर
Yes.
उसके बाद वो देख रहे हैं अहल्या है जिनका त्याग कर दिया उनके हस्बैंड ने बिकॉज ऑफ एन इनडिस्क्रिशन। Then he goes to Mithila and he sees that there's a girl who's suffering, because of a condition that has been kept by her father. There are so many experiences that we don't, actually give credit to that would have
Right.
shaped his thought process. और
Right.
वो सब देखने के बाद और वो सब एक्सपीरियंस करने के बाद when he was taking decisions he was doing the right thing. He did not want to get trapped with human emotions while taking decisions. तो उन्होंने इसीलिए ये डिसीजन लिया जो
This
उनके
is
पिता के।
sorry, this is not to say that he didn't have the emotion. So
ऑफ
he
कोर्स।
loved his, so there was love, there was anxiety, there was anger, and again, जैसे मैं कहती हूँ ना कि वो अगर आप ह्यूमन फॉर्म में भी देखें तो आई थिंक लोगों को ना वो थोड़ा सा डिस्टिंक्शन करना पड़ेगा, लाइक जैसे कि गुस्सा करना पाप है, लेकिन राम का तो गुस्सा लेजेंडरी था। उन्होंने तो मतलब समुद्र को बोला था मैं सुखा दूंगा, राइट? हिज एंगर वाज लेजेंडरी, बट एंगर मतलब मुझे ऐसा लगता है एज व्हाट ही इज ट्राइंग टू टेल अस कि अगर कभी कभी आप अन्याय देखें और आपको गुस्सा ना आए तो देयर इज अ प्रॉब्लम विद यू। अगर
बिल्कुल
आप कोई अन्याय होता देखें किसी औरत के साथ और आपको गुस्सा ना आए, या कोई आपसे ब्राइब मांगे और आपको गुस्सा ना आए, तो कुछ गड़बड़ है।
बिल्कुल
तो
बिल्कुल।
दिस इज अ गुड एंगर, यू आर सपोज टू गेट एंग्री बिकॉज ये गलत है, ये पाप है या
डेफिनेटली।
न्याय है, जो भी आप कर लें, दैट दिस इज जस्ट रॉन्ग। सो
राइट।
टू मेक अ वेरी ब्रॉड स्टेटमेंट कि ना गेटिंग एंग्री इज नॉट गुड, गुस्सा बिल्कुल अच्छा नहीं होता, यू कैनॉट हैव, एंड दैट इज वेयर
यस।
आई थिंक योर मर्यादा गेट्स सेट कि भाई मैं गुस्सा ऐसे ही नहीं हो रहा हूँ,
हाँ।
ये सही में अन्याय है, इस पे अगर मैं गुस्सा नहीं होगा तो देन आई एम नॉट इवन ह्यूमन, आई एम
बिल्कुल
परफॉर्मिंग एट अ सब ह्यूमन लेवल काइंड ऑफ।
बिल्कुल
सो आप
बिल्कुल।
कोई भी इमोशन सारे थे राम के पास, लेकिन आप किसी भी इमोशन को डायरेक्शन क्या दे रहे हैं और उसका रिएक्शन क्या कर रहे हैं, दैट विल डिपेंड ऑन कि दैट विल डिसाइड कि आपका ये गुस्सा ठीक है या ये गुस्सा गलत है, ये प्यार ठीक है।
बिल्कुल।
This blind love of Dasharath towards Kaikeyi, which basically meant that two of his other wives who he had promised love and attention were getting minimized, ये प्यार गलत है, but
राइट।
सीता का प्यार ठीक है। राम का प्यार टुवर्ड सीता इज ओके, राइट?
यस।
अगर दशरथ तीनों क्वींस को शायद इक्वल दर्जा देते तो शायद वो भी ठीक होता, बिकॉज इट्स अ पर्सनल चॉइस।
बिल्कुल बिल्कुल। आई थिंक अ लॉट ऑफ थिंग्स, इमोशंस के बिना तो कोई भी नहीं है, कोई भी ह्यूमन फॉर्म में आके इमोशन से रहित तो हो ही नहीं सकता। आई थिंक
हाँ,
द वे डील विद दोज इमोशंस इज व्हाट separates, as they say, the men from the boys. I would say it separates men from, divine men, or divine people, divinity, because गुस्सा उनको भी आता था, प्यार उनको भी था। इनफैक्ट जब सीता के का abduction होता है जंगल में, ही क्राइज लाइक अ चाइल्ड एंड ही लमेंटिंग इन द वाल्मीकि रामायण। वो बहुत रोते हैं और बहुत गुस्सा होते हैं, और लक्ष्मण तब उन्हें समझाते हैं कि अब हमें उनको ढूंढना है, आप अपने खुद को इमोशन में मत खोइए वगैरह। और उसके बाद जब ये समुद्र रास्ता नहीं दे रहा, उसके पहले उन्होंने 1 हफ्ता बैठ के तपस्या की थी, समुद्र से रास्ता मांगा, पर समुद्र नहीं हिला,
वही
इसीलिए
ना
फिर
कि
उन्होंने।
ये समुद्र का, वरुण का ये पाप था कि नहीं दूंगा, जिद थी, बिकॉज
राइट।
राम वाज ऑन द राइट पाथ, ही वाज जस्ट ही नीडेड द
यस।
पाथ फॉर द
यस।
राइट थिंग टू डू, ही वाज गोइंग टू गेट हिज वाइफ बैक। सो टेक्निकली वरुण को करना चाहिए था कि हाँ आप एक अच्छे काम के लिए जा रहे हैं, मैं रास्ता खोलता हूँ। सो
राइट।
देन ऐसी चीज में एंगर इज आई गेस मैंडेटरी,
यस।
और ये ठीक गुस्सा है।
डेफिनेटली। डेफिनेटली। एंड इनफैक्ट ये तो मतलब सिर्फ राम जी नहीं, आप कृष्ण जी की उससे भी, जो एंटायर भगवत गीता वॉज रिसाइटेड एट दी बैटल फील्ड, जहां पे अगर आप गुस्सा नहीं करोगे तो आप कैसे लड़ोगे, युद्ध कैसे करोगे। और अर्जुन का वही कंफ्यूजन था कि मुझे नहीं लड़ना है, मुझे अपने परिजनों को नहीं मारना है। और तो भगवान ने उसे वही समझाया कि ये तुम्हारी ड्यूटी है एज अ क्षत्रिय। For the same held true for Ram as a Raghuvanshi or as a Suryavanshi. He had certain duties towards his kingdom, towards the throne, towards his father, towards his family, and उन्होंने वो सारी बखूबी निभाई।
मैंने ना इस पे एक विनीत पॉडकास्ट भी किया है, बट लेट्स टॉक अबाउट राम एज अ ब्रदर। तो एक राम है, उनके भाई हैं लक्ष्मण एंड भरत एंड शत्रुघ्न, बट लेट्स जस्ट लुक एट लक्ष्मण एंड भरत एज द मेन कैरेक्टर्स ऑफ कि उन्होंने अपना भाई का धर्म कैसे निभाया। एक भाई वो भी है, बाली एंड सुग्रीव भी हैं। एक सेट ऑफ भाईज रावण, विभीषण और कुंभकर्ण भी हैं, राइट? सो दे आर ऑल सेट्स ऑफ ब्रदर्स हु आर डिस्पेंसिंग विद ब्रदरली ड्यूटीज, ठीक है ना? सो मैं इसमें जैसे मैं बाली और सुग्रीव को देखूं, सो देयर इज अ डिस्ट्रस्ट। बाली को लगा वो जानबूझ के गुफा बंद कर गए और वो मारना चाहते थे मुझे, राइट? एंड बाली इज नॉट विलिंग टू लिसन टू हिज ब्रदर, सो देयर इज डिस्ट्रस्ट एंड देयर इज एंगर व्हिच ही इज गिविंग वेंट टू where Sugriv is concerned.
Right.
Then there is Vibhishan and Kumbhakarna to Ravan. So Kumbhakarna also tells him कि भाई तुमने किया तो गलत है, लेकिन मेरा धर्म ये कहता है कि मेरे को अपने भाई के साथ खड़ा होना है, मौत ही क्यों ना आ जाए। Whereas Vibhishan says कि मैं धर्म के अगेंस्ट नहीं जाऊंगा, तुमने काम गलत किया है, तुम भाई हो मेरे, मतलब यू आर माय ब्रदर, बट स्टिल मैं ना, आई विल नॉट साइड विद यू। एक ये है। सो I mean, in brotherly relations, what does Ram tell you about कि भाई ideal brother किसे कहते हैं? Somebody who obviously trusts, because Bali Sugriva are not the ideal brothers. Kumbhakarna मतलब you know unconditional support है भाई के लिए, तो भाई बेशक गलत भी कर रहा है लेकिन मैं फिर भी तुम्हारे साथ खड़ा हूँ, ये भी ठीक नहीं माना गया है रामायण में। विभीषण का ना बहुत ही स्ट्रेंज लगता है मुझे विनीत, बिकॉज विभीषण का ये है कि विभीषण असुरों का राजा भी बना, विभीषण को सही, यू नो, ही इज बीन considered a good asur and a good person, a good human being, but he is never considered a good brother, मतलब you know, तो ये है, तो मतलब you know brotherly relations में भी आप कैसे behave करेंगे, ये राम से आता है, because मर्यादा पुरुषोत्तम वो है। तो what is his, you know, how is he reacting to his brothers? Like जैसे वो पूरी सेना लेके भरत जंगल पहुंच जाते हैं, लक्ष्मण इज सेइंग कि ये तुमको मारने आया है, and he says relax, ऐसा कुछ भी नहीं है, right? Because there's a trust, there's an inherent trust there.
Yes.
So what should an ideal brotherhood look like? A relationship between brothers.
I think probably is the epitome of, you know, how ideal brothers should be. And agar hum actually, if we realize, you know, none of them were his real brothers, they were all step brothers.
Right.
And you can never ever imagine such kind of bond or camaraderie between step brothers. You know, जो हम stories सुनते हैं या देखते हैं, जो television पे, television series में or movies में, you always show step brothers as, you know, for some reason they're always at loggerheads. And in fact, Bali or Sugriv were real brothers. Ravan, Kumbhakarna and Vibhishan were real brothers.
Right.
But Ram, अपने step brothers के साथ, he was so cordial and he was so loving towards his step brothers, जितना कि दूसरे वानर हो या असुर हो, they were not that loving with their own real brothers. I think that says a lot about Ram and the culture that he was trying to propagate. कि आपकी जो relationship है, whether it's your friends, your father, your brothers, everybody that he came in touch with, you know, he was always at the best of his behavior, you know. So जैसे हम बोलते हैं कि मतलब बच्चों को सिखाते हैं कि यार स्कूल जा रहे हो या पार्टी है, कोई घर पे मेहमान आ रहे हैं, you have to be at your best behavior, बाद में वो चले जाएंगे तो आप जो मर्जी करो। बट वो राम जी का वो बाद में वाला पार्ट कभी था ही नहीं, he was always at his best behavior. So with his brothers, it's in fact, you know, with as you said, you know, the incidents of Bharat reaching Chitrakoot and Lakshman doubting him. Again, Lakshman had that distrust, but Ram didn't have that mistrust of his brother, and he trusted him so much that he allowed him to become the king. Bharat उनको बुलाने आए थे कि आप चलो राजा बनो, and he said नहीं, तुम ही राजा बनो. I have full faith in you, tum hi raja bano. That is how much I trust you, because I know you, we've grown up together. So there is one, I think again, you know, personal ambition was never his, never on top of his mind. His purpose was probably to avoid you know, a sort of a civil war in the city, in his kingdom, because by now there would probably be some supporters of Bharat. And of course, a majority of population was a supporter of Ram. So अगर राम अब वापस आते, क्या पता एक सिविल वॉर हो सकता था. You never know, right? His thoughts always were for the greater good. It was never about his own, and not even his own family. It was always about what is best for the society at large. Or same cheese when when you see his encounter with Bali and Sugriv, and you see that the last conversation that Bali and Ramji have, and Bali is saying that आपने ये किया, ये आपको नहीं करना था, this was not your fight and all that, and Ram gives him all the explanations that he needs, and he tells him that this is not the way, in a civilized society this is not the way to behave, and your younger brother has to be like your son. You have to take care of your younger brother like your son. That is what civilized world has. That is a requirement for being civilized. Otherwise, you will always say might is right. I am the stronger one. I am the older one, or sab mera hai.
So
And the same thing.
you think Bali was punished for his personal distrust of his brother and the way he treated his brother and his wife?
I
Because
think yes.
he's not kind of propagating Sugriv's greed and ambition also, because वो अंगद को कहते हैं कि अंगद ही जो
Exactly.
बाली का बेटा है वो
Exactly.
उत्तराधिकारी बनेगा. So
Bilkul.
he says that Bali is the king, so the lineage, मतलब अंगद, if obviously proven
Right.
capable, which he was, will become the
Yes.
उत्तराधिकारी. So Bali was
Yes.
punished not because कि तुम बुरे राजा हो, लेकिन तुम बुरे राजा हो, तुमने अपने भाई के जो ट्रीट किया है वो गलत है, and you are being
बिल्कुल.
punished for that and that
बिल-
alone.
एंड भाई के साथ जो उन्होंने ट्रीट किया, जो भाई की पत्नी के साथ जो किया, सो मतलब देयर वर सो मेनी थिंग्स दैट शुडंट हैव हैपेंड, एंड ही डिड नॉट ट्रस्ट सुग्रीव, ही थ्रू हिम आउट, ही केप्ट हिज वाइफ जबरदस्ती, एंड सुग्रीव वाज बैनिश्ड out of the kingdom. And the very fact that he was, I mean, there are stories, Uttar Ramayan mein story hai that Vali was able to defeat Ravan.
Yeah.
Right. So Uttarkand में वो story है. So Bali was powerful, and apparently he had a boon, जिसके through he could get half the powers of his opponent in a fight. So Ram had to take shelter, hide, and then kill him. So there were logical reasons for whatever things happened, and Ram was trying to establish the ideal dharma of a civilized society, even in the forest. And Vali's counter, position was that this is not your city, this is the jungle, and this is where Jungle Raj is there, it's existing, and I haven't done anything bad according to that rule of law. But Ram says that for a society to progress and to become civilized, this has to change. It cannot always be might is right.
Everyone needs to evolve.
Everyone needs to evolve. Every society needs to evolve.
So again, मेरे को, so now we've looked at the brotherly relations. Then I just want to stop here for a little kind of a humor bit. A lot of people say ना, complain हमारी लाइफ में कि यार वो सुनता नहीं है मेरी, या वो सुनती नहीं है मेरी, या जो भी बच्चे हो, पेरेंट्स हो, जो भी हो. And I always tell them, I said, have you looked at रामायण? किसी ने किसी की नहीं सुनी. सीता जी को बोलते रह गए कि आप ना अयोध्या में रहिए, आप मत चलिए जंगल, उन्होंने नहीं सुनी. वो लक्ष्मण को बोलते रहे कि शूर्पणखा की नाक मत काटो, लक्ष्मण went ahead and did it. सुनी तो किसने सुनी? कैकेयी ने सुनी मंथरा की, और रावण ने सुनी शूर्पणखा की. So other than these two people, मतलब even for Bali, Tara kept telling him, and after Sugriv became king, Tara kept telling him कि Ram is waiting for you to send the emissaries to look for Sita. तुम यहाँ पे ना मजे कर रहे हो, अभी ये ठीक नहीं है. तो मतलब पूरे रामायण में ना, if you look at कि किसने किसकी सुनी, तो it's like कि आपको शूर्पणखा मिली थी सुनने, and both, and मंथरा की सुनी कैकेयी ने. So my thing is that it's a human tendency कि आप सिर्फ उन्हीं लोगों की सुनते हो जो आपसे रेजोनेट करते हैं. कहीं ना कहीं आपके मन में एक वो ग्रीड है कैकेयी के टू बी द क्वीन मदर. कहीं ना कहीं रावण के मन में है दैट ही शुड हैव सीता, राइट? ही इज जस्ट मेकिंग एन एक्सक्यूज. शी मेड एन एक्सक्यूज ऑफ मंथरा, ही मेड एन एक्सक्यूज ऑफ शूर्पणखा. बट ये हमारी लाइफ में भी ऐसे ही होता है कि हमें भी बहुत ही माइंडफुल रहना चाहिए कि कोई हमें कोई एडवाइस देता है तो बोले हाँ हाँ मैं तुम्हारी सुन लेती हूँ, तो विच बेसिकली मीन्स कि तुमको भी चाहिए था, बट इट मे और मे नॉट बी द राइट थिंग टू डू.
Right. You were just waiting for a validation from someone
You
else that yes, this is the right thing to do. And
और मेरे को
actually,
बहाना मिल गया और whatever,
बहाना मिल
you
गया,
know,
मिल
it's
गया. नहीं, Gunjan ji, in fact, that brings me to a point about Shootnaka also. That, when we're talking about brotherly love, it's not just between brothers. How did
yes,
Ravan treat Shootnaka? Shootnaka actually, when, that incident happened and she goes to Ravan just rubbishes her away. He just tells her to literally shoo away. And
yeah,
he says,
right,
I'm really not concerned with what you're doing. And he did not want to avenge her. He did not think there was anything wrong that had happened. Shubhnaka was anyways a brat, as per him. And, she probably deserved what she got. रावण ने जो कुछ भी किया वो शूर्पणखा की इंसल्ट अवेंज करने के लिए बिल्कुल नहीं किया. उसको
right.
जब शूर्पणखा ने लालच दिया सीता की ब्यूटी का विवरण करके, तब रावण ने डिसाइड किया कि वो कुछ करेगा.
Because
रावण
he's
का
Ravan, he must have all beautiful things and all the best things. He
यस,
must have it.
बिल्कुल. एंड रावण का मोटिव सिर्फ और सिर्फ सीता को पाना था. शूर्पणखा को का रिवेंज लेना नहीं था. और इनफैक्ट काफी लोगों को ये भी नहीं पता कि शूर्पणखा वाज ऑलरेडी मैरिड, यू नो
Yes.
एंड ये कहानी भी
उसके हस्बैंड
उत्तरकांड.
की मारा था उसको.
शूर्पणखा के हस्बैंड को भी रावण ने ही मारा था लड़ाई में. सो ही इज रिस्पॉन्सिबल फॉर मेकिंग हिज ओन सिस्टर अ विडो. He did not want to avenge her insult till she started talking about Sita's beauty. So, कौन सा brotherly love है यहाँ? हम कौन से भाई, कौन से प्रोटेक्शन की या भाई की फीलिंग की बात कर रहे हैं यहाँ पे?
Which is the same thing, when Mantra goes to Kaikai also shoos her away, and then she starts, feeding her fear. कि कौशल्या तुमको महल से बाहर निकाल देगी because she'll become
Yes.
the queen mother or whatever, right? And somewhere, she stokes her ego कि तुम्हारी promise है, that means your husband doesn't love you, his promises
Right.
mean nothing, it's just, useless, everything, before, she gets all riled up and all that. So, हाँ, तो मतलब ये again I get this from the रामायण कि आप जिसकी सुन रहे हैं, आपको बहुत ही mindful रहना पड़ेगा कि आप क्यों सुन रहे हैं.
बिल्कुल, बिल्कुल.
Is he or she, whoever is giving you an advice, is actually on the right side of your moral compass?
Yes.
Or are you just looking at an excuse कि इसने बोला था तो मैंने ऐसा कर दिया? That doesn't work,
Definitely. और मुझे तो ये लगता है, बहुत सारे क्वेश्चंस उठते हैं राम जी के ऊपर, या उन्होंने ये क्यों किया या वो क्यों नहीं किया. कोई भी और किसी को क्यों नहीं पूछता कि अब राम के जो भाई थे, अगर राम ने डिसीजन लिया सीता को निष्कासित करने का, उनके भाई क्या कर रहे थे? नोबडी रिवोल्टेड. राम जी के जो भाई थे उनकी पत्नियां कौन थी? सीता की बहनें. None of them revolted. They were happy, in their life of luxury. So, मतलब there are so many questions जो हम उन लोगों पे भी उठा सकते हैं, but always, it's always easy to find faults with the hero.
मेरे को हमेशा ये भी लगता है, now that we are looking at relationships, we need like Ram as a husband. So, he came from a place and a society where, having one wife was not the done thing. Matlab,
Yes.
having multiple wives was a part of your culture.
Yes.
So it was okay. And he chose not to do that. Now he may have done it because he had seen his mother suffer, because,
Right.
she was
Right.
neglected queen, because Kaikai was there. Whatever
Yes.
his reasons would have been, he decided he was going to have one wife. मेरे को
Right.
ऐसा लगता है that, people should make a distinction between abandoning your queen versus abandoning your wife.
Right.
So
Complete.
the Raja Ram said, because of a dhobi, because उन्होंने उनके उस पे लगाया, कोई accusation किया, तो उन्होंने, as a queen, she was asked to leave, that she
Yes.
could not be sitting on the throne anymore. But
Yes.
मुझे ऐसा लगता है that a true abandoning of wife happens when your husband starts neglecting you, forgets about you, or finds another love in his life.
Very
Right?
true. Very true.
So physical presence of a spouse in your life is not a good thing, is not a mandatory thing for a happy marriage. ऐसे तो मैं कहूँ तो मतलब हमारे सारे फौजी, साल में 2 महीने अपने स्पाउस के साथ रहते हैं, 10 महीने बाहर रहते हैं. Army defense officers' wives generally bring up their children all by themselves because the husbands are away. So, एक physical presence की जरूरत नहीं है. एक मैरिज में ऑफ अ स्पाउस आपका मेंटल इमोशनल लॉयल्टी कितनी है. सो मेरे को ऐसा लगता है कि राम ने कभी भी सीता को ना एज अ हस्बैंड कभी अबैंडन नहीं किया.
Definitely, Gunjanji. I think you hit the nail on the head, which a lot of people don't understand this distinction. कि as a king उनको करना पड़ा. And actually again I would like to highlight something कि सिर्फ एक धोबी की कहानी नहीं है. ये धोबी की जो कहानी है that actually is a it comes from the Padma Puran. Actually वाल्मीकि रामायण में there is no धोबी. उनके जो स्पाइज हैं राम जी के, वो उनको आके बोलते हैं कि पूरे किंगडम में ये बातें हो रही हैं. And
Right.
people have been talking these things. There have been whispers about all this since a while now, but we never communicated it to you. And that day, Ram says कि नहीं, as a king, I have to know. तुम मुझे बताओ अभी तक तुमने मुझसे क्या छुपाया है. And that is when his spies, and there are 5 or 6, I think, very trusted people, and they tell him कि आपके किंगडम में ये बातें हो रही हैं. And in fact, when Valmiki Ramayana narrates that episode, uspe Ram is clearly affected by listening to all this. He cannot hear this about his wife, or he doesn't know what to do. He's a human, right? He's behaving like a human. He doesn't know what to do, and he doesn't know whom to prioritize now, whether his citizens' words or his wife's loyalty. And as a king, ultimately his citizens' words or his citizens' expectations rather from their queen, they take precedence over his own belief in his wife's loyalty. और इनफैक्ट सिर्फ उनको एक त्यागने वाली बात नहीं थी कि उन्होंने उनको जंगल में छोड़ दिया. इनफैक्ट सीता और राम की उसके पहले वाले ही दिन, इफ वी रीड द वाल्मीकि रामायण, उसके पहले वाले दिन ही दे आर टॉकिंग, और आई थिंक द सेम डे दे आर टॉकिंग about Sita wanting to visit the ashrams that they had been to when they were in exile. तो जब वो exile में गए थे, सबसे पहले वो भारद्वाज ऋषि के आश्रम गए थे. वाल्मीकि का आश्रम is very close to that place. And सीता ने ये इच्छा व्यक्त की थी कि मुझे वो आश्रम देखने हैं दोबारा. So Ram is thinking out loud, and he's thinking अब मैं क्या करूं, ये सिचुएशन आ गई है. तो वो लक्ष्मण को बोलते हैं कि सीता ने मुझे इच्छा ये उसने जाहिर की थी that she wants to go there. So you go and drop her in the vicinity of those ashrams. That is it. He does not give any reason. He does not give any logic, because all the fight is within his own mind. He is dealing with everything himself.
Because हम लोग में से कोई था नहीं वहां पे, तो अगर हम सिर्फ we don't know what he was thinking. तो जैसे मतलब when you read books, there's this book called 1,000 Seeds of Joy. I don't know whether you've read it. उसमें ना this person is having these conversations with the different devis. So at one point he has it with Sita कि आपको बुरा नहीं लगा, आपके पति ने आपको घर से निकाल दिया. She said कि ये सब बात की बात है जो सोसाइटी ने just patriarchal society ने या जो भी उन्होंने ये एंटर किया है. मेरा और राम का हमेशा से था कि हमारे बच्चे जंगल में ही बड़े होंगे, क्योंकि मैं उनको राजसी पार्ट दिखाना ही नहीं चाह रही थी. क्योंकि हम लोग जब जंगल में थे तो हमको लगा कि बहुत कुछ है नेचर से सीखने का. तो शी अकॉर्डिंग टू हर इट वाज अ डिसीजन बिटवीन राम एंड सीता बोथ that she would take her kids to the jungle and they would grow up in the jungle. So that is one version of it, and these are all our versions of it, right?
Yes.
Who thought about it and all.
Yes.
So अगेन ये वही वाली बात हो गई कि आपको रामायण का वही इंटरप्रिटेशन समझ आएगा जिससे आप रेजोनेट करते हैं. अगर आपको लगता है कि इफ यू आर लाइक अ तुलसीदास हु सेज एक्चुअली कि औरत ही सारी फसाद का जड़ है, अगर आप इससे रेजोनेट करते हैं तो आपका एक अलग ही इंटरप्रिटेशन है रामायण का. So it is very person based कि आप किससे रेजोनेट कर रहे हैं, and then you will decide. There are a lot of people, a lot of my friends, who say कि अरे यार वाइफ को कैसे निकाल दिया. मैंने कहा क्योंकि लीडर थे. तो अगर तुम्हें ये रेजोनेट नहीं कर रहा है तो probably you are not leadership material. Because anybody who's a leadership material and wants to be a leader will have to make these sacrifices. I said तुम मेरे को आज बता दो, अगर आज ये बोल दिया जाए कि हमारे प्रेसिडेंट साहब की वाइफ थोड़ी there's something wrong, there's she's been in there's been corruption charges or anything against her. Yes. You will expect him कि भैया ये पत्नी को जरा साइड कीजिए, आप हमारे लीडर हैं. And as हम लोग भी प्रजा ही है ना basically.
Yeah. No, we've seen it. It's been happening since our independence. We've seen nepotism in our system, right? In our leadership, there has always been nepotism. So for us to understand, Ram's perspective from a leader is very difficult because we have not seen leaders like that. We have always been exposed to the other side where you always know कि कोई छोटे से छोटा नेता भी होगा, वो कभी जेल नहीं जाएगा, उसके कोई रिश्तेदार कभी पकड़े नहीं जाएंगे. That was the scenario for all these years, and we have never been exposed to the other side जहां पे ऐसा भी हो सकता है कि वो अपनी फैमिली को ही त्याग दे लोगों की खुशी के लिए. So it's very
Yes.
difficult for people to understand, and they tend to go through all sorts of emotions of outrage and indignation about him leaving his wife. But as you said, he never left her in real
As a
sense.
husband, he never abandoned her. As a queen, I think he just came and said that my duties towards my praja is far superior than my personal happiness.
Yes. And he never ever married again is a very, very strong point in his favor, that he still loved Sita. And in
Right.
fact, even at the time of Ashwamedh Yagna, when Vashish tells him that you have to be married to do this, to perform this yagna, a householder cannot perform this yagna without his spouse. And Ram refuses point blank. And that is why the Sone ki Sita is created. Otherwise, him being a king, unko koi kami thodi thi. His father had 3 wives.
And
He was
300 concubines.
and 300 concubines. So, what was stopping Ram from doing the same? It was only his love and devotion towards Sita that, stopped him from doing it, which people do not appreciate. And it's very unfortunate, but, people need to read, people need to, deep dive before judging anyone. It's very easy for us to judge. It's very easy to judge the past, with the benefit of wearing, 21st century glasses. It's very easy for us to judge and comment. But had we been in that situation, how would we have reacted? Would we have the moral fiber to take those decisions? That is the real question.
मेरी ना एक और theory है Vineet, and I would love to hear your views on it. So Ram comes from a very illustrious lineage, right? It starts from Raghu, and then there is Nimi, and then there is Bhagirath, then there is obviously Raja Harishchandra, who's like, so he comes from a very illustrious lineage. But मैंने जितना पढ़ा है या जितना मुझे समझ में आया, मुझे ऐसा लगता है that Ram is the first person जिन्होंने ये बोला है कि मेरे नाम के आगे श्री लगेगा. Shri is basically the feminine escort of anybody. So Shri is the Lakshmi.
Yes.
Right? So Ram के आगे श्री लगा, श्री राम हुए वो, उसके बाद फिर श्री कृष्ण हुए, and and so on and so forth. उनसे पहले कभी किसी ने ना श्री को अपने से ज्यादा अहमियत नहीं दी थी. But it was just Ram. So from a scientific, because you've read the scriptures and everything, do you think कि पहले किसी ने श्री लगाया था राम से पहले अपने नाम के आगे?
I've never come across that, but I think, as you said, you highlighted it very aptly, that probably none of the previous kings, चाहे वो हरीशचंद्र ही थे, उन्होंने भी, उनकी भी एक ही,
हरीशचंद्र ही बोलते हैं उनको.
हाँ, राजा हरीशचंद्र थे, but he is known for his सत्यवादी nature, not for his love or devotion to his family. उन्होंने तो अपनी फैमिली को बेच दिया था, सत्य की रक्षा के लिए.
वहां से वो आया था कि प्राण जाए पर वचन न जाए.
जी.
So that is the Raghukul.
That is, I think, very, very correct. That, Ram ji से पहले किसी ने इतनी ज्यादा वैल्यू अपनी स्पाउस को, स्पेशली किसी फीमेल को नहीं दी थी. एंड दैट इज द रीजन व्हाई इट्स अ वेरी स्पेशल बॉन्ड between Ram and Sita. चाहे हम भृगु का कर्स भी मान ले कि हाँ, they were meant to be separated. चाहे हम मान ले कि there were multiple curses at work that were keeping them apart. There are stories, I think पद्म पुराण में ही स्टोरी है जिसमें सीता ने बचपन में एक पैरेट के कपल को अलग किया था, और तो वो पैरेट ने श्राप दिया था जो दूसरा वाला था कि you will also be separated by your spouse. There are so many other curses that are there in the backstory. But what comes across very strongly is the respect that they had for each other. Of course, Sita would have been devastated by what happened. She would not have expected. But I think Ram did not abandon her. as we said, as a husband, but also even as a king, he made sure that she was taken care of. He dropped her, he made Lakshman drop her near the ashrams where he knew she would be taken care of. And she was well taken care of by Valmiki. Valmiki has a big role to play in their life, and he was the chronicler of Ram's life. So if Valmiki thought it was wrong, he would have definitely written it down. Valmiki himself was gifted by Brahma the divine vision to know everything, right from what was going on in the characters' heads at the time of those particular situations. And he has written down everything very truthfully. राम के इमोशंस क्या थे, सीता के इमोशंस क्या थे, प्रजा के क्या इमोशंस थे, and now it is left to us how to interpret it, and
Right.
which is where we lack.
मुझे ना ये भी बहुत सुंदर लगता है रामायण में that while Ram and Sita were separated and she was bringing up children, उन्होंने अपने बच्चे खुद पैदा किए, पाले पोसे बड़ा किया, बट बच्चों को ना रामायण जो है वो वाल्मीकि जी ने सिखाई. सो एट नो गिवन पॉइंट इन टाइम सीता उनकी अपने इमोशन कितने भी हों कि लाइक यू सेड शी मस्ट हैव बीन डेवास्टेटेड, उन्होंने कि बच्चों के मन में कभी जहर नहीं घोला towards Ayodhya, towards their father or whatever. So this is a huge learning for people like us कि children are collateral damage in a say a bad marriage, right?
Yes.
लेकिन आप बच्चों को pawns नहीं बना सकते.
बिल्कुल बिल्कुल सही गुंजन जी. I think it's a beautiful thought that you said, and we see it happening around us, especially in today's day and age, both parents are working most of the time, especially in cities like Mumbai or I don't know, Delhi as well. But a lot of times parents are working, both of them are working. Child does get neglected sometimes. And there's so many times when, the arguments of parents spill on, into the lives of children. And they affect them, adversely, not in a good way. And Sita was so amazing, she was such an amazing mother that she did not allow her own feelings to cloud the judgment of her growing up children who were very impressionable in that age. उनको पूरी कहानी पता थी, पर उनको ये नहीं पता था कि जो सीता जिसकी हम कहानी बता रहे हैं वो हमारी ही माँ का नाम है. So that's so fascinating, and as you said, it's a huge learning from modern parents that you should not get your children into that. You should not get, your baggage should not be dropped onto your children's head, basically.
Right, because आपकी शादी अगर unhappy है या you separated or divorced or whatever, आपके अपने reasons हैं. These are very adult reasons. Children know nothing. They are collateral damage. Why would you use them as pawns? And Sita just telling them very matter-of-factly one day that yes, I am the Sita from the Ramayana, and yes, your father has left me in the ashram, would have been a factual statement, not even a poisoning. She didn't even do that.
She didn't even do that. Yes.
She said, because she didn't want, she realized that, Ram had left her in an ashram because he's a leader, he's a king, but he's a great husband, he would have been a great father. And the children can make their own decision and have their own relationship with their father without me clouding it, so to speak.
Yes.
So I think there's so much learning from Ram's life on every relationship, on every occasion from Ram and Sita both, of how beautiful it's been. But life has not been easy. But all said and done, Vineet, modern day life is also not easy. मुझे ऐसा लगता है, when I kind of look at people, I just realize कि मुझे ऐसा लगता है वनवास हर किसी की जिंदगी में आता है. Some people call it कि जी मेरी 7.5 चल रही है. I'm like okay. Right? जब बुरा टाइम चल रहा है या जो भी, I have not till date met a human being in my life जिसने ये कहा हो कि मेरी लाइफ में बुरा वक्त आया ही नहीं है अभी तक. At our age सबका आके जा चुका होता है, चल रहा होता है, आने वाला होता है, और पता नहीं कुछ तो होता है, right? So why don't we consider this as a vanvas? Vanvas is not only going to jungle; it's adverse conditions, it's adverse environment where you have to. You have to still maintain the basic humanity. Definitely.
Gunjan ji, again, I think Ram ji ki life se, we talked a lot about his relationships, but just, seeing how he behaved in each situation. When he was exiled, he took it smiling, he took the decision, as an order from the king, and he did it, with happiness. He didn't want to take Sita along. Sita was adamant, Lakshman was adamant. He had no way to dissuade them. He tried everything that he could. When they did not, he agreed, he accepted that decision also. He had to go to the jungle. The exile, conditions of the exile demanded them to live like hermits. They were not, he was a prince. He was used to probably, and a kshatriya, right? So he was probably used to eating well and, drinking well. And he left all that in the forest. He was dressed up in bark skin, etc. And again, if we realize that, Ram and Sita probably did not even have marital, conjugal relationship in the forest, because as hermits, they were not supposed to. They followed that as well with happiness. They dealt with whatever life had to throw on them. They lived through the jungle for such a long time, for the entire period of the exile. 13 years, they were wandering from place to place. Imagine a king, a prince, a king to be, doing that, a prince, a princess dealing with all that. And they made the best use of that situation. So many times life throws adversities at us and we start crying, we start cribbing. But look at what Ram and Sita did. They learned from their experiences. They visited all the different ashrams, hermitages that were there. They visited all of them, whether it is Sutikshna, whether it is Atri, whether it is Agastya. They took wisdom from all of them. And in fact, there's a very beautiful conversation between Ram and Sita at Panchvati, where, Sita is saying that, why are you getting involved with these people? Why are you getting involved? A lot of people don't know. Sita was a very strong-headed woman, and she says that, I don't like this, us getting involved with in the lives of these Rishi Munis, because we have to fight the Asuras to protect them. Right? And she doesn't want, she basically does not want violence. And she says that I don't want us to get involved in this. It is someone else's problem. But Ram is the ideal Kshatriya. He says, as a king of Ayodhya, future king of Ayodhya, what would my citizens say that I was not able to protect mere forest dwellers, from Asuras? What would my conscience tell me that as a Kshatriya bearing arms, I am not able to protect? That is my dharma. That's my Kshatriya dharma, to protect people who do not carry arms. And I will do my duty. And that is how the entire, Khar and Dushan army got decimated and all that. But Sita was completely against it. So they themselves were learning and growing as people, throughout that journey. And the entire decision, like Sita was so adamant that no, she did not give in to Ravan's overtures, for becoming. Ravan offered her that you can become the queen. I'll replace Mandodari with you. You will be the chief queen of Lanka. She did not get excited by that offer because she loved only Ram. And same for Ram. They were so devoted to each other that did not even consider the possibility that there was another option.
एक बहुत ही जैसे अभी आपने कहा that Ram was not comfortable with the idea of Sita and Lakshman joining him in the Vanvas, saying ki it's not an easy thing, and the protection is going to be problem, you are not used to it, etc. And yet another story comes to mind that there's a story that जब वो जंगल में जा रहे होते हैं, so they're not used to walking इतनी नंगे पैर या खड़ाऊ में. So Sita would sometimes sit down and fall asleep because she was so tired. And Ram never used to wake her up. But जब sunset होता था ना, he would actually stand in front of her कि वो sun rays ना पड़े सीता पे, because she'll wake up. So there was no no irritation in him saying कि अब उठो और रात को कहीं पहुंच जाए, because he just realized that she's so tired and she just needs her rest, and it's okay, even if she sleeps through the evening, and I'll just be there to protect her. And that was very beautiful. Vineet, one of our audience members has asked this question of you: what do you think about Shri Ram eating meat?
I thought that would come since I mentioned he was a Kshatriya. I don't think it is mentioned anywhere, but it would probably be safe to assume that it was possible. It was a possibility because they were Kshatriyas. And Kshatriyas actually are, in the scriptures, Kshatriyas are the only people who were allowed to consume meat, provided they hunted it themselves. Not that they bought it, but if they had hunted it, the scriptures actually say that the only way justification of taking a life, if you want to eat an animal, was allowed was that there was a danger to your own life. How would that happen if you're hunting in the jungle and you are also exposed to all the dangers of the forest? So there's an equal, maybe not equal. You are probably riding a horse and you have weapons which the animals don't, but there has to be some amount of danger involved in that hunt. Only then you were allowed to kill and have that animal. But the scriptures generally talk about animal consumption only if it is offered to a god in a sacrifice. Normal humans were not generally encouraged to kill and eat animals. In fact, dealing in flesh trade was considered one of the lowest occupations.
So, मतलब सतयुग में तो I can understand, but त्रेता युग तक आते आते हैं ना, when Ram came, Ram is in त्रेता युग. So क्षत्रियों का आ गया था. So then these theories started floating कि hunting, for example. So there are some stories where the four brothers would get into a hunting match, etc. My belief is that it has to come from within, क्योंकि आपकी भी एक residual karmic desires या जो भी हैं. If you are a non-vegetarian, why are you a non-vegetarian? I mean, we are human beings. We can make our own choice. आपके मन से आ रहा है कि आपको खाना है, इसलिए आप खा रहे हैं. जिस दिन मन से आना बंद हो जाएगा, आप वेजिटेरियन टर्न हो जाएंगे. ऐसा तो है नहीं कि कोई लीगल रूल्स हैं इसके ऊपर कि वेजिटेरियन पेरेंट्स कैन ओनली हैव वेजिटेरियन चिल्ड्रन. दैट नथिंग like that exists anymore. And I'm sure. तो पहले भी. So I think I also believe that Ram did turn because he had seen so much violence in his life that he didn't want to perpetuate any more of it. And therefore, he stopped hunting or stopped eating meat. I'm sure Sita had a huge influence on him. But as a Kshatriya, one can assume.
Yes, we don't find it mentioned in the scriptures, but a lot of people have these questions in the back of their mind. So probably they did, but it's not mentioned in the scriptures. If somebody says that दिखाओ कहाँ लिखा है, नहीं लिखा है भाई, कहीं नहीं लिखा है.
So like I said, लिखा तो बहुत कुछ नहीं है, लेकिन लिखा तो ये भी नहीं है कि उन्होंने सीता को मिसट्रीट किया, लेकिन आपने अपना मतलब people have kind of come to that interpretation. Like I said, people हम लोग सिर्फ वही सुनते हैं जो हम सुनना चाहते हैं.
जी जी. नहीं गुंजन जी. Another problem is, in today's day and age, it is fashionable to disparage the heroes and, sort of glorify the villains. So that is the sad truth. Today, Ravan is turned into a hero or Duryodhan is turned into a hero. And there are various people who've written books and, who are creating shows with these protagonists, these people as protagonists and showing, everything else that happened around them as an injustice. I think that's trendy today. But unless and because people are not aware of what is written in the scriptures, people do not know what all happened. They only know the selective truths that have been shared with them. And unless and until you read your original scripture, you will not realize. Just read the Valmiki Ramayana. Don't trust me. Don't trust what anyone else says. Open the Valmiki Ramayana, read it. The truth will be clear to you. Who was actually a villain in the story and who wasn't. It's very, very clear. Even though the characters have shades of grey, it's very apparent. Even in Mahabharata, everybody did something wrong at some point of time. But the end purpose had to be for the greater good.
Right. Vineet, we have another question from Inu Kaushal, who's asking you whether Shatrughan's role in Ramayana. What was Shatrughan's role?
Right. So Shatrughan, he kind of gets sidelined because we don't know the whole story. But Shatrughan has been given a very prominent role in the Uttar Ramayana, in the Uttar Kand of the Ramayana. So till then, till Bharat was ruling, probably Shatrughan was the only guy who was left, only prince who was left in Ayodhya, because Bharat was living outside the city. Nandigram. He vowed not to step inside the city till Ram had come back. So Shatrughan was the guy who was in charge, who was taking care of the entire city, probably running its affairs, back and forth between Bharat and the palace, and whatever events were happening for 14 long years. He took charge, and in fact, even after that, in Uttarakhand, he is deputed by Ram to fight another Asur who's called Laban. Laban Asur, who ruled from Vrindavan, Mathura. And this Asura was defeated and killed by Shatrughan. So without any help from anybody. And so that's probably the highlight of his life later on, where he finds mention prominently. But
Right.
we can assume that, for entire 14 years duration, he was the only prince in Ayodhya. He was managing the entire affairs of the city,
Right.
of the kingdom.
Vineet, मेरा ये सवाल है, and this is what the theory of, this is what our principle on which House of Ram was started, is that Ram is like a, kind of a kunji for life. And every time you run into trouble or you have a question, जैसे मैं हमेशा कहती हूँ कि धर्म तो आपके हमेशा क्लैश होंगे, right? I tell my friends, I said, your spouse and your parents don't get along, right? आप अपनी छुट्टी किसके साथ मनाएंगे? You have to choose, right? मतलब आपने
Right.
अपनी पत्नी को भी बोला है कि I'm going to spend the vacation time with you, and I'm going to, whatever. It comes within the spousal relationship, and you have a dharma towards your parents to spend time with them and, be respectful, etc. But
Right.
sometimes you get stuck, right? You just have 7 days of vacation time, and will you spend it with your children and your spouse, which is the right thing to do, or go spend it with your parents? Because apparently you can't spend it together. So अब इसमें तो आप क्या धर्म, you'll have to choose one dharma. One dharma is going to go down, right? You are going to let go of one and choose the other. तो यहाँ पे आपकी मर्यादा सेट होती है कि पेरेंट्स और स्पाउस में किसको चुनना चाहिए. अब इसमें भी कोई, there are no right answers, there are no wrong answers, there are no right and wrong. This is going to be very personal, but all you do is, you choose your maryada. And that is why it's like, when you're faced with these little things in life and you're like, kya karu? It's always good to go back to say that ideal human being, how does that behave? What would Ram have done in a similar situation? And I can guarantee, it has been my personal experience, you can guarantee that if you have an issue, if you know the Ramayana, you will find an incident in the Ramayana which talks about that. Whether it is, a cheating spouse, look at Mandodari, or what not to do, right?
Yes.
She's one of the most devout wives. She's gone and got an Amrit for Ravan and all that, right? She's a great mom. She's quite an amazing queen, but she's not considered the perfect wife, because she's still, supporting a husband in his illegal activities or whatever, right? So आपकी जिंदगी में मेरे को ऐसा लगता है कि एक तो हर ह्यूमन बीइंग के जिंदगी में वनवास जरूर आता है.
जी, बिल्कुल.
तो आप उसको वनवास मान के चलें. How you conduct yourself during your vanvas is going to make you Ram. And आपकी लाइफ में कोई भी इंसिडेंट हो, आप अगर if you know the Ramayana and if you have actually reflected upon it कि ऐसा क्यों हुआ होगा, कैसे हुआ होगा, why did Hanuman side with Sugriv, not with Bali? Why was Angad made the prince? Why did Tara do this? Why was, मतलब as a Kshatriya at 16 years of age, Ram को बोला गया कि औरतों पे नहीं कभी शस्त्र उठाने, and yet he goes and kills Tadka. What is the reason, right? So the Ramayana can answer all your issues. My only thing is that, Vineet, do you really personally think कि to behave and think like a Ram, to be perfect, क्या ये सही में इतना मुश्किल है आज की जिंदगी में, where people keep saying कि I think people just use it as a crutch कि वो तो भगवान थे ना, तो उन्होंने तो कर लिया, but हमसे नहीं हो पाएगा. अरे क्यों नहीं हो पाएगा? ऐसा क्या किया था उन्होंने?
Right. I think, Gunjanji, I think it's a lot of it is doable. Maybe not going to the jungle, relinquishing everything that you have. I don't think anybody will do that today, probably because we are too greedy or too ambitious. But we'll know in our heart that what is the right thing to do. Whether we do it or not is a different thing. but unki story definitely inspires you, and all the characters. I would say not just Ram, there's of course Ram, Sita, Bharat, Lakshman, everybody in the all the characters, Hanuman, Sugriv, all of them teach us a lot of things. And there is so much that we can learn from the Ramayana, as you said. And I don't really personally believe that it is difficult to follow those ideals. If situations are such that you are forced with a very difficult choice to make, then of course you would have to pick what is best for a majority of people, which is what Ram did. It may lead to personal grief, but you have to pick the option which is for the greatest good. That is all. That is the mapdand of dharma. It has to be for the greater good, and that is it.
A lot of my friends tell me कि राम बनना ही क्यों चाहिए, राम की जिंदगी was just miserable शुरू से end तक. And I'm like, that's actually true, right? But
I think we have an option. Adversity comes on you. You don't choose it.
my answer is तो किसकी जिंदगी अच्छी थी? रावण की अच्छी थी, बाली की अच्छी थी, दशरथ की अच्छी थी, कैकई की अच्छी थी. Who would you rather be?
Yes.
And I think every human being will actually, if they just journey inside and they look within,
Yes.
and everyone wants to be a Ram. Everybody wants to be a Ram and have a Sita-like spouse. सबको सीता राम जैसी ही शादी चाहिए, सबको राम जैसा ही बेटा चाहिए, सबको राम जैसा ही भाई चाहिए. So it's I think that is a self-answering question. That
Definitely.
you want to be a Ram, then why not be one? Right?
Yes.
So
And I
I
would
think
just
it
say
is
that
doable.
explore the story as it happened, instead of going by the narratives that are built by people who have various reasons to propound certain theories. But everybody has their own reasons in this world. आप कुछ भी आप बोलते हो, कहते हो, आप स्प्रेड करते हो, स्पेशली अगर कोई चीजें, तो आपका कोई कारण है उसके पीछे, आपका कोई मोटिव है, आपका कोई thought process है उसके पीछे. So instead of going by what someone else is saying, why not judge for yourself? Why not pick up the book and read it yourself? Form your own opinions. आपको किसी के भी बहकावे में या किसी के भी इन्फ्लुएंस में आने की जरूरत नहीं है. आप अपने आप डिसाइड करो. कहीं पे भी कोई हमारे किसी स्क्रिप्चर में ये नहीं लिखा गया है कि एक ये ही रास्ता है भगवान तक पहुंचने का. हमारे स्क्रिप्चर्स में
Sorry, please continue.
No, I was just saying that हमारे स्क्रिप्चर्स में हमें इतनी फ्रीडम दी गई है टू चूज आवर ओन पाथ. सो अगर आपको लगता है कि राम का पाथ सही नहीं था, तो आपको जो पाथ सही लगता है आप वो चुनिए, लेकिन सारी इंफॉर्मेशन लेने के बाद आप राम की कंडीशन समझिए, आप उनकी लाइफ समझिए, सिचुएशन समझिए, फिर आप डिसीजन लीजिए कि ये पाथ सही था या नहीं. नॉट बेस्ड ऑन हियरसे.
एंड वो तो बोला ही गया है दैट इफ यू रीड, तो रामकृष्ण परमहंस ने जब एनलाइटनमेंट को डिस्क्राइब किया था, ही हैड डिस्क्राइब्ड इट एज 7 hills. Sai Baba described it very differently. Vivekanand described it very differently. So Gautam Buddha has described it very differently. So they're saying that you can be enlightened, but हर का अपना personal experience होता है. तो जब तक आप experience नहीं करेंगे, आप you can't be enlightened, and only trust your own experience, because ये आपने खुद experience किया है. तो अगर अब मैं या डॉक्टर विनीत आपको ये बोलें कि बस रामायण पढ़ लो और प्रॉब्लम खत्म हो जाएगी, नहीं होगी. आपको खुद what you take from Ramayana is going to be key in how the Ramayana will change your life, and how Ram can be your almost like a guiding light. Ram ने कभी ये नहीं कहा कि I am your savior. He can be your guide. He can be your mentor. Gautam Buddha was a savior. Ram wasn't. Ram is just a guide and a mentor. And in today's day and age, I think we can all be our own savior rather than waiting कि कोई आएगा.
Definitely.
So that ways. Unfortunately, we've run out of time. Vineet, I'm so sorry, but this was lovely, and I just wanted to thank you for being on the podcast. House of Ram is actually, I just wanted to let our audience know, House of Ram is an initiative which is part empowerment of people of marginalized society, and also following a dharma of supporting old age homes. तो हमारा सारा products जो है वो marginalized society के members बनाते हैं by hand. Then they are taken to Ayodhya for blessing. Every product is blessed at the Hanumangadi temple in Ayodhya before being shipped to you, and all our proceeds are going to supporting old age homes. So I just want to thank Dr. Vineet Agarwal again for being here, and I hope you will find value in the House of Ram and support it. Thank you
My
so much,
pleasure,
Dr.
Dr.
Agarwal.
Ji. Thank you so much for inviting me. I hope the audience found something of value in our discussion, and I hope they were inspired to look into Ram's life with a new set of eyes and, find answers for themselves, as you said. So thank you so much. And all
Thank
the
you so
best
much.
for all
May you
your
be
work.
blessed. May everybody in our audience and this world be blessed. Thank you.
Thank you.